Hi, my name is Carly Register, and today I'm going to be presenting my International Cultural Photo Essay project, and the country that I chose was Japan. So talking a little bit about culture. Culture is basically the entire way of life of a group of people that acts as a lens through which one views the world that is passed from one generation to the next. Japanese culture ultimately revolves around a kind and humble way of living, a realistic approach to situations in life, and art in many forms. Ethnocentrism is simply a term applied to the cultural ethnic bias, whether it's conscious or unconscious, in which an individual views the world from a perspective of his or her own group, establishing the in group as archetypal and rating all other groups with reference to this idea. So those who live in Japan are recognized for their ethnocentrism, mostly due to their homogeneous population, which I will talk about more later. And the term Japanocentrism was created to describe the belief that Japan is or should be the center of the world because of its global accomplishments in technology, economics, and political hegemony. Um, just like any foreigner entering a new country, Americans would consider some of these things culture shock in Japan. So, culture shock is a sense of disorientation that occurs when entering a radically new social or cultural environment. So, as American, few culture shocks that we may experience would be the high tech toilets, the advertisements that are everywhere, the organizational escalators. So, basically, they go to the left side, which allows anyone who's in a rush to pass them, and even the insanely crowded streets, like no matter the time of day, all the streets are insanely packed most of the time, especially in bigger cities like Osaka and Japan and Tokyo. So as foreigners enter Japan, they would um as foreigners enter America, let's say a foreigner enters America, they would most likely receive culture shock from bigger food proportions, such as I mean, they would receive culture shock from bigger food proportions, teenage life, and conversations being held with strangers, since they necessarily don't go out of their way to talk to strangers. Japanese material culture is prominent in their culture because they are known for their art, their buildings, their food, and clothing. So, material culture is any physical object that gives social meaning and associates with one culture. A great example is the style of buildings in Japan. The traditional Japanese style of buildings are called minka, and they are commonly seen as wooden structures that are elevated and have thatched roofs. They typically can contain sliding doors called fushima in place of walls for special occasion purposes. Another great example is the clothing in Japan. Traditional clothing obviously varies from modern Japanese clothing. So, in modern Japan, the Harajuku style became trendy in the 1970s, and the style contains many colors and unique outfits. While traditional Japanese culture includes kimonos, but they are slowly growing in international appeal and being modernized in a way. As far as non-material culture goes, non-material culture is the way of thinking and behaving as a group. So, an example in Japan is simply the Japanese language, just like any other language in any other country or culture. The Japanese language is spoken by approximately 120 million inhabitants of Japan, and by the Japanese who live in Hawaii and on the North and South American mainlands. It is also spoken as a second language by the Chinese and the Korean people who lived under Japanese occupations earlier this century. So, Japanese body languages also play a key part in Japan's culture. So, for example, as a sign of respect, people will bow. And hand gestures are also really popular in Japan. So, like the OK symbol and making an X with your arms to signal no. Just like every other culture, they have values. So the values are shared of beliefs that a group of people considers to be worthwhile or desirable in life. What is good or bad, right or wrong, beautiful or ugly, is up to that culture specifically. They articulate the essence of everything that is a cultural group cherishes in its society. A very strong value in Japan is the respect given to elders. They see elders as superior, and they should therefore gain more respect due to their wiseness and how much more experience they have in life. They also value always doing your best and working hard as a group. Some norms in Japan. So, norms are the rules and guidelines regarding what kinds of behavior are acceptable. They develop directly out of a culture's value system, whether legal action, regulations, or just social expectation. Norms are largely agreed upon by most members of a group. Some are even set laws. So, one Japanese law um, that is common is that very many swimming pool facilities will not prohibit any visible tattoos because tattoos are very frowned upon in Japan. So, and another one is that minors have set curfews in Japan, typically at around 10 or 11 p.m. at the latest. Norms can, as I mentioned, norm can also be can be laws, but they can also not be set laws. So they are just what people are simply used to or naturally feel indicate indifferent about in a certain culture. So in America, we always encourage men to be gentlemen to women by holding doors and pulling out chairs. But this is different in Japan because Japan has more of a hierarchical society and where men are superior to women in a way. So ladies do not expect these simple gestures from men. As far as moral holidays go, moral holidays are holidays that are mild when it comes to norms and restrictions. So they don't put. It's common for things to be out of the ordinary. Shogatsu is also known as New Year celebrations, and it celebrates the New Year by women dressing in kimonos, a traditional Japanese clothing piece. And but this would be against norms in Japan because you wouldn't see a woman wearing a kimono every day, and they would stand out if they were in everyday life. So taboos, in a more smaller and personal term, is in Japanese culture. Um, so for an example, it's like when Americans tip their waiters or waitresses. It's not done in Japan because the waiters and waitresses are actually decently paid without tips or tips. So it can also it can often cause awkward moments since it's not an expected thing to do like it is in America. As far as multiculturalism goes, it's a policy that involves honoring the diverse racial, ethnic, national, and linguistic backgrounds of various individuals and groups. So, Japan is a mostly homogeneous country, as I mentioned, and I will continue to mention throughout this presentation. But as time continues, certain regions are becoming more accepting towards other cultures. As for the most part, currently Japan is only doing this under tight circumstances, though. Um, this is a pie graph that I chose. It represents all of the ethnicities that are resident in Japan. So as you can see, Japanese is mostly a homogeneous culture. So and you see that 98.4% of the country is made from Japanese residents, while anything, any any other ethnicity or culture is below 1%. This just shows that mostly everyone is living by the same culture, whereas America, if I pulled up a graph of America, you would definitely see more cultures and more um, heterogeneous. So it's important to know that this culture is very spot on with the things they believe in. Religion always plays a huge part in a country's culture, and since there's so many religions in the world, but in Japan specifically, two major religions are Shinto and Buddhism. They actually coexist in a way. They live in harmony because they complement each other very well in very many ways. They're very similar. So, subcultures in Japan. Subcultures are basically a culture within a culture. It's a group within a society that is differentiated by its distinct values, norms, and lifestyle. So, as Japan grows, many subcultures, especially in fashion, have developed. So for example, Asian beauty standards are known to be very strict. So most say that you should be slim, have fair skin, small nose, big eyes. However, the subculture Gairu is a subculture that allows people to rebel against these standards by wearing bold statement pieces, having tan skin, and expressing themselves for who they are, rather than trying to live by these beauty standards. So, ideal versus real culture. Japan lives by an ideal culture that emphasizes being respectful and kind, especially towards your elders, but this is not necessarily the case for everyone. Though most Japanese people are respectful, there have been various situations reported where they show little to no respect towards strangers or clerks. For example, according to Arisa from the Japan Today website, there have been many occasions where people in Japan snatch their receipts and change without a bow or even a thank you. So, ideal culture is what norms, values, and patterns that a society hopes to live by, while real culture is the reality of it and what they actually live by, even if it doesn't match with the ideal. So, as time's gone on, just like any other culture, Japanese culture has changed over time drastically since the Jomon period to now the 21st century. They had influence from other Asian countries such as South Korea, India, and China, and they have had numerous technological advancements and change in norms, values, and patterns. It's gained a sense of flexibility when problems occur due to its drastic changes. This is why Japan has become so well known and so powerful today in society because of their flexibility. When a problem occurs, they know how to quickly fix it, especially in politics. So the culture has changed and had an impact on the rest of the world, whether it be Harajuku fashion style or how Japanese language has expanded or other factors. So Japan is known for their innovative technology that is still rapidly growing globally. They are mostly recognized for their innovations such as electric rice cookers, karaoke machines, LED lights, cassette players, and the Shinkansen, which is the bullet train. So most of the Japanese innovations deal with their talent in robotics, automation, and artificial intelligence. Uh, they've been known to have an innovative country for centuries, but most of their innovations root as solutions to problems. So they're very problem solving when it comes to innovations, and in their culture, it's just grown so much that they're known for their technology. Cultural diffusion is so culture change can also occur when different groups share their material and non-material culture with each other, and this is a process called cultural diffusion. Japan is spread throughout the world through technology, food, fashion, and more. A great example of this is anime. So, anime is a style of film and television animation whose audience is for children and adults, depending on the anime. And it has spread throughout the world and become a popular genre that has been dubbed in many different languages to reach viewers across the world. Cultural imperialism is the imposition of one's cultural beliefs and practices on another culture through media and consumer products rather than by military force. So, Japan is often seen as a hugely urban country, and this urbanization is often spread by marketing their most popular city, Tokyo. The boom of Japan's popularity was in the 1990s when innovations such as anime, Japanese fashion, and food were being spread globally, and Tokyo basically represents Japan and what it stands for: its urbanization, its technology, its advancement compared to the rest of the world, which is why it became so popular. And lastly, cultural leveling. It occurs when cultures that were once distinct become increasingly similar to one another. So, Japanese was once a very unique country, and it still is, but they're often compared to modern day South Korea. So, South Korea adopted a lot of Japan's culture, and Japan also adopted a lot of South Korea's culture. The societal structure in terms of respect and hierarchy are very similar in both cultures as well. They both share a cultivated mindset. The fashion is also very similar. So, this is my works cited page, my main three sources, and that is my presentation. Thank you.